We don't expect the government to solve 100% of our own problems. The government is supposed to solve at least 1 or 2% of our problems. The rest, 99 or 98%, it's ourselves also to solve it.
A new political divide emerges in Kenya as digitally native Gen Z protests challenges established systems, reshaping the nation's social and political landscape. Plus, Kenyans are now being targeted by a new wave of AI voice cloning scams, with criminals using the technology to impersonate family members in distress and demand urgent money transfers.
Nowadays, it is extremely easy for hackers to use available resources and even easier tools to do the hacking process, So really, you don't just need advanced technologies. You just need a very simple internet access, and as long as you have money, you have all these available tools online where you can use and access those kind of tools which you can use to do the hacking.
A humanitarian crisis unfolds in Dadaab as a surge of fresh arrivals from neighboring conflicts stretches resources to a breaking point. And Sudan's civil war enters its third year, creating the world's largest displacement crisis and driving a surge of refugees into the country. Live from the Weekly Verdict newsroom, I am Pauline Ochieng, and we welcome our viewers in Kenya and around the world. We are with you for the next 25 minutes. Thank you for joining us. This is the Weekly Verdict. You can join the conversation on our social media handles on Facebook, The Weekly Verdict, on Twitter, Weekly Verdict, and the hashtag, The Weekly Verdict. A generational shift is underway in Kenya. We are witnessing the rise of a new digitally native political force as Gen Z use social media to mobilize protests that are directly challenging long-established political systems. This leaderless movement is forcing a national conversation and reshaping the very fabric of our politics. Our correspondent Dama Pudui has this special report.
What began as online discontent has exploded onto the streets. This isn't a movement led by political parties or traditional unions. It's been coordinated in real time on platforms like TikTok and X, formerly known as Twitter. The tools of mobilization are smartphones and data bundles, their battleground, the internet and city squares. This is a demographic reality check. Kenya is a nation of the young, and they are increasingly using their numbers and digital savviness to hold the government accountable of their actions. The core demands are economic jobs, lower cost of living, and systemic, an end to corruption and political hypocrisy. But the method is what is truly disruptive.
I don't think Gen Zs can change anything with the current government because last year we held demonstrations and many lost lives, and not one or anything of our cries were heard, and the government went to run like nothing had happened to the people of the country. So I don't think there is any change that can happen.
And now our correspondent Dama Mudui joins us live. Dama, the most striking thing is the lack of a central figurehead. How are these mobilizations actually organized? Is there a secret committee or even a hidden hierarchy?
That's the core of it, Pauline. There is no central committee. It's a fluid, organic process. One person posts an idea, it then gets amplified by influential accounts, memes and even graphics are created sharing key details like the time and place, and it escalates. It's a digital hive mind making collective decision to act.
And we are actually seeing one of those spaces happening live right now on our split screen. So the conversation is ongoing, even as we speak. What is the biggest challenge this movement faces going forward?
Cohesion and endurance, Pauline. Without a formal structure, it's difficult to sustain pressure, to negotiate, or even to transition from protest to policy. The government is patient. They may be waiting to see if this energy subsides or if it can be co-opted. The movement's true test will be its ability to organize beyond the street and into its lasting institutions.
Dama, thank you for that insight. This is a truly unprecedented moment in Kenyan politics.
Thank you, Pauline.
To help us analyze the long-term implications of this, I am now joined by a security and political analyst. Welcome to the Weekly Verdict.
Thank you. My name is Mohammed Doyo. I am a development economist by profession, as well as a public policy management specialist. I live in Nairobi, Kenya, so perhaps I am able to explain various economics and public policy aspects to issues. Yes.
Is this a passing phenomenon, or are we witnessing the permanent division of Kenya's political space?
Social and political polarization in Kenya is motivated by various issues. First is the economic inequality in the country, where majority of the people live below $2 per day, and this is based on World Bank estimates on standards of living. When majority of the population are living way below the standards, what happens is that most of the people have no purchasing power to a decent economic living. So what happens is that you get a lot of people in the poor bracket, and so there will be grievances because part of human satisfaction is when the basic needs are satisfied. Well, that is one of the reasons. Recently, there has been an Oxfam report on the same, that 1% of the country control more than 90% of resources. And this is a dimension to the economic inequality I'm talking about. As such, it creates, these narratives of hustlers versus dynasties. And this is where polarization comes across, because the society is divided into various economic clusters. Secondly, along economic lines, there is the issue of wages and labor, where a section of the population feel that they are not actually compensated in real terms to what they are delivering in the economy value chain. As such, the issues of wages and labor are high. It's the reason why you see a lot of strikes, a lot of labor unions coming up, including students at the public universities. They understand what I am talking about when they have stayed more than 2 months at home because lecturers have gone on strike. The issues of wages and labor in this country are huge. Along social issues, the first is there is the intergenerational misunderstanding of issues. Right now, we have the majority of population below 25 years, and these people currently live very different from what their parents used to live. Their values, their principles, their dimension to issues, their perspectives is very different. So what happens is, in social terms, they look and conceptualize issues so differently compared to the younger generation, and this is what perhaps has resulted to what they call Gen Z, uprising, because the Gen Zs no longer see issues from the perspective of maybe ethnic bias, from all those factors that bring division. They look at issues from the point of economic satisfaction, from the point of instant gratification, among other factors. So basically, in a nutshell, I think those are key issues towards polarization.
So, what does this mean for the future of Kenyan democracy? Could this lead to greater polarization, or could it force a more issue-based politics?
The polarization of course, will lead to more issue-based politics. A time comes when people will no longer care about ethnically based politics when they cannot meet their basic needs. If you cannot have food, shelter, clothes, anything else will become secondary. It will reach a time when these social and economic inequalities make people to realize that their problems are the same. You know, they realize that what unites them is more than what divides them. You know, including the economic factors I've mentioned, the social inequality factors that I have discussed. So basically, I think for our democracy, this polarization may lead to more issue-centered politics.
This was such a fascinating analysis. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Now to a different kind of digital threat, one that is preying on the very instincts that keep families together. A new wave of AI voice cloning scams is sweeping across Kenya. Criminals are using artificial intelligence to perfectly mimic the voice of a loved one in distress, convincing people to send money in a state of panic. Our correspondent has been investigating.
Of Fuliza scammers in a 449 million heist.
From Fuliza loan theft syndicate.
I mean, you've got to give it to them. This is brilliance of a certain order that I just cannot explain.
The scam is chilling in its simplicity. It starts with data harvesting, scrapping social media for audio clips of your voice, then using freely available AI tools. The scammer clones it, the call comes in. Mom, it's me. I've been in an accident. Brother, I've been arrested. I need bail. The voice is uncanny. The urgency is real. The police are scrambling to keep up, but the technology is outpacing awareness.
About this story, yes, kushikwa, mnafaa kushikwa, crime does not pay. Lakini the kind amount of work these people have done.
This isn't just a scam, it is a fundamental breach of trust. The human voice, which is one of the most intimate forms of identification, can no longer be trusted. As AI becomes more accessible, experts warn the financial fraud are just the beginning. John Jepchirchir, The Weekly Verdict, Nairobi.
With me now is an independent cybersecurity analyst. Welcome to the show. How easy is it for a criminal to get their hands on this technology?
Thank you, Pauline, for that question. To answer that question is simply to say yes. It has become very simpler for hackers to access some of these systems. It has become extremely easy for them, unlike in the past where the sophisticated systems were only available to advanced hackers. Nowadays it is extremely easy for a hacker to use available resources and even easier tools to do the hacking process. So really you don't just need advanced technologies, you just need a very simple internet access, and as long as you have money, you have all these available tools online where you can use and access those kind of tools which you can use to do the hacking. You don't need to be very technical for you to be an hacker. Nowadays we have different tools which will give you a user guide or a step-by-step process flow that you can use to execute those unethical processes like hacking. So really, even if you have very rudimental understanding of technology, you can actually use that step-by-step guide and be able to get access to different systems. Really, some operate like applications on your mobile device or even your laptop. Some are actually websites. So once you install it, it will show you, click here, do this next. So even if you're extremely not an expert in that space, you can easily follow that process flow and be able to do those unethical things which hackers are able to do, you know. So once you do that, you can now get or exploit people online or in different spaces, depending on what you are doing. Some of these technologies allow someone to actually access your private information. What I can actually call PII, personal identifiable information. You know, it could be the messages you're sending to your friends or relatives. It could be the photos you've taken, you know, which preserve different memories, different experiences you've had. It could also be your locations or even your online platforms. So these are some of the vulnerabilities you expose yourself to as an average person. Can you imagine the messages you've been sending maybe to a loved one or your boyfriend getting exposed out there and, you know, being exposed online and people showing what you've been speaking to these people? And this could be extremely confidential. So once that kind of material information is shared on those, you know, platforms, then you become vulnerable as a person. So can you imagine your financial data? Maybe it could be your borrowing history, it could be your money which is, you know, stolen. It could also be, you know, the photos you've taken that are shared online. So this is the kind of risk you are exposed to as an individual person, and which is why you just need to be more aware of the risks that you face as an individual. And these are the kind of, you know, the dangers which then work at the background without you knowing really.
So, this isn't a high-level spy tool. It's democratized. What's the next evolution of this threat? Could it be used for corporate surveillance or even to disrupt politics?
Yeah, for sure. The next evolution really is scale and automation. You know, in spaces like politics and you know, where public opinion really matters. When it comes to, you know, mass influence like elections or voters, you know, people and these hackers and this information can actually be used to steal votes or influence or manipulate the public opinions. You know, perhaps you want to pass a certain bill or a certain referendum or any other imperative things which affect a people or a nation. So false information can be spread to manipulate the public opinion. So much so that if something is bad, they can actually spread false information, which then can be used to change the public view, and then they might end up doing the wrong thing because there's this false narrative that is going on. I've spoken about, you know, even stealing votes. People could be voting, but people can use this system to hack systems and, you know, steal votes of someone who is actually winning. That has happened in democracies like the US. You've seen during Trump and what's her name? I'm forgetting the presidential nominee for the Democrats. You know, and there was the claims that votes were stolen. Can you imagine in such kind of advanced democracies, technology is being used to steal and votes and influence the public opinion? So those are some of the things which can be, you know, be manipulated. We can also speak of compromising the political campaigns which from time to time are, you know, happening. So those are the kind of things which then really get exposed to hackers and such kind of unethical behaviors.
This should act as a sobering warning. Thank you for spelling out the reality of this risk for us.
Yeah, thank you so much for finding time for this interview. I appreciate it, and I hope this has been a wonderful experience.
Coming up after the break, a humanitarian crisis unfolding on our own doorstep. We take you inside the strained Dadaab refugee camps, where a surge of new arrivals is pushing resources to the limit. That's next on The Weekly Verdict. weekly verdict. We now turn to a persistent and growing humanitarian crisis in the Dadaab refugee complex. A fresh wave of arrivals, fleeing conflict and drought in neighboring countries, is stretching humanitarian resources to an absolute breaking point, creating tensions with the local host community in Garissa County.
The dam designed for 90,000 people, now bursting at the seams with nearly 500,000 souls. Every day, hundreds more trickle in, carrying little more than the clothes on their back and the stories of trauma. The sheer scale of need is overwhelming. Food, water, and medical supplies are perpetually in short supply. Aid workers are being forced to make impossible choices. But the strain isn't inside the camp. The local host community, itself vulnerable, feels the pressure of natural resources like water and pastureland and on the local infrastructure. This is more than a refugee crisis. It is a crisis for compassion versus capacity. Kenya has kept its borders open, but the international support required to sustain this border is fluttering. Without urgent intervention, the situation here is headed for a catastrophe. Juliet Kamau, reporting for the Weekly Verdict.
To analyze the sustainability of this situation, I am joined by a program director with a local NGO. Welcome to the show. We hear about the numbers, but what is the real-world long-term impact on the host community in Garissa County?
The prolonged presence of refugees in Garissa County, especially around Dadaab, has really shaped the local dynamics, especially if you look at how the camps have brought about infrastructure. Schools and health services also have benefited of that. But they've also created dependency and strained limited natural resources over time, competition for water, competition for pasture, firewood. That also has intensified, and also the high rates of youth unemployment, and that still remains high. Socially, however, the host has really feels marginalized. The community that is being hosted feels marginalized, perceiving that aid agencies prioritize more on the refugee over the locals. So that also leads to tension and fatigue with the temporary status quo that has lasted roughly over 3 years. Economically, refugee camps have generated trade and informal labor markets, but they've also distorted local prices and created even uneven development. Look at areas around the camp, while remote areas are the ones that lag. Okay, environmentally, deforestation, land degradation, water depletion. These have really impacted and fostered resentment among the locals, who increasingly have viewed the camp as both an economic opportunity as well as an ecological burden, right? So that then shapes the perception that the refugee presence is both a blessing and a curse at the same time.
So, is the current model of perpetual humanitarian aid in Dadaab broken?
Yes. The DAB model is fundamentally unsustainable. It was designed for short-term relief, not decades of displacement. Continuous aid has, however, created dependency among refugees and frustration among hosts. So without a shift towards development, self-reliance, integration approaches, the system will continue to recycle crisis management rather than build resilience. What's needed is a hybrid humanitarian development model that then empowers refugees and the host community economically and socially.
That was a frank assessment. Thank you for your valuable work and for sharing your insights.
Thank you, Pauline. It was a pleasure having that discussion.
Finally, we look beyond our borders to a conflict with direct consequences for Kenya. Sudan's brutal civil war has entered its third year, creating the world's largest displacement crisis. That wave of human suffering is now crashing upon Kenya's shores, testing our nation's humanitarian capacity and regional stability.
The fighting between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces has plunged Sudan into a man-made hell. Millions have been internally displaced, while over 1 million more have fled across borders, seeking safety in neighboring nations like Chad, South Sudan, Egypt, and Kenya. For Kenya, The influx is a strain on an already burdened system. Many of those arriving are traumatized and in need of urgent medical care and shelter, adding to the pressures we've just seen in camps like Dadaab. The conflict has shut down Sudan's economy, disrupting trade routes and fueling regional instability, which in turn creates a vicious cycle of more displacement and human suffering. Joan Gumbi, The Weekly Verdict, Nairobi.
For a geopolitical perspective, I am now joined by an international relations analyst. Welcome to the show. Beyond the immediate humanitarian toll, what are the geopolitical implications of a prolonged war in Sudan for the East African community and for Kenya specifically?
The human toll is indeed regrettable, but a bigger contested zone where there is armed conflict, the population ostensibly has to move to safe havens, which are the neighboring countries, like, say, South Sudan. There is Chad neighboring Sudan on the other side. Closer home, there's Rwanda and Burundi, then there's Kenya. Tanzania is slightly further away. So due to the conflict, the mass has to move to safer areas. And with them, they move literally with nothing. So it's just themselves and the little they can carry. So the neighboring countries have to provide for them shelter, food, and security outside their normal budgets. So this conflict ends up straining the budgets of the neighboring countries who are offering to help their citizens. And this also forces the countries that are accepting these refugees to share resources with the incoming population from the conflicted area, thereby denying their own citizens certain basic rights, certain basic elements which they were initially providing.
So, what is the path forward? Is there a viable diplomatic solution that Kenya can uphold?
It is not easy because, remember, these conflicts have been there for a very long time. For one, Sudan is the largest country in Africa, so it has a huge population. So when it is destabilized, you can imagine that population is actually forced to move to other areas. And though the international community also chips in terms of budgetary support to the countries that are hosting these refugees, diplomatically, both the East African region and SADC have been trying to resolve this particular conflict for a very long time, but without success. It's like they only manage to get a ceasefire. The peace lasts for at most a year or so, and then it erupts again. The only way out is to bring the warring factions together, give them a platform where they can engage fully, agree to disagree, and narrow their differences so that they can live together as brothers and sisters.
That was a clear-eyed view of the stakes at hand. Thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here and always ready to share the experiences some of us have over the years.
And that is our verdict for this week. We have covered the new political awakening of Kenya's youth, the predatory threat of AI voice scams, the deepening humanitarian crisis in Dadaab, and the regional fallout from Sudan's devastating war. From all of us here at the Weekly Verdict Newsroom, thank you for trusting us with your time. Stay informed, stay vigilant. I'm your host, Pauline Ochieng.